Soksabay Primary 3s. Today we are going to learn how artifacts can teach us about the past. But first, we are going to revise who was Tutankhamun. So who was Tutankhamun? Tutankhamun was born in 1341 BC and was originally named Tutankhaten, meaning the living image of Aten. His father, Akhenaten, was a religious radical. He changed the entire religion of ancient Egypt to worship only the sun god, Aten. Tutankhaten didn't really like his name, so after he became the youngest pharaoh of Egypt in 1332 BC at the age of 9, King Tut restored all religious policies of Egypt and changed his name to Tutankhamun, meaning the living image of Amun. Tutankhamun can be spelt with a U, with an E, or with an O. Being a king at a very young age, King Tut has to do what as he was told by his advisors or viziers and guardians. Later, he married his half-sister and had 2 unborn children. And in 1322 BC, King Tut died when he was just about 19 years old. So if King Tut died when he was 19, how many years did he rule ancient Egypt? Why do you think he died at a very young age? Some people believed that he was murdered because of the fracture that was found on his skull. Others said that he was not really healthy and was always sick as a child because of some genetic abnormalities because his parents were cousins. Until in 2016, after more than 3,000 years, scientists, with the help of modern technology, found out the reason of King Tut's death. The scientists said that it was because of his fractured thigh that became infected and ultimately fatal or deadly. Poor King Tut. So, do you think King Tut was happy to be a king at the age of 9? So let's see what his diary might have looked like. So the first entry here says, he was surrounded by boring old advisors. So these old advisors says they always order him around and they never listen to whatever he says or said. So they always told him, do this, do that. Don't do this because you're still a boy. Don't do that. You're still young and we know what to do. So you must follow all our orders to you. So these advisors were only interested in gaining more power and more money for themselves. And they were probably very jealous of King Tut because he was just 9 years old. And he's already the king of the whole Egypt. And being a king at the age of 9, that also means that he has a lot of work to do. So he didn't have time to play with his friends. Or he didn't really had any friend. So he didn't really have any friend. Yeah, no friends of his own age. And though he had golden thrones and fancy furniture, they weren't really comfortable. And everyone else wants to be pharaoh. So he couldn't trust anyone. Most of you are already 9 years old, if not 8. So you are the same age as King Tut, as when King Tut became a king. So let's say Just imagine you are going to be the king of your own country, of your whole country, the entire country. Do you think you are going to be happy ruling the whole or the entire country? You're not going to have any friends. You can't go to school and play with your friends. You will be surrounded by old people who only want your money and your power. Do you think it's enjoyable? Do you think you'll be happy with that kind of life? So that was a not so short recap of King Tutankhamun. Now, before we proceed about artifacts, let us find out first who Howard Carter is and why is he important. So this is Howard Carter. He was born in 1874. He was an English archaeologist and Egyptologist who worked on several important excavations. Then, in 1907, he met Lord Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon is a very, very rich man. By this time, Carter believed that there was a tomb that was buried somewhere in the Valley of the Kings. And so he asked money from Lord Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon then agreed and funded Carter's tomb hunting excavations. Howard Carter and his team started searching in 1914 and spent years looking for the tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings was located in the southern part of ancient Egypt and west of River Nile. Now it's called Luxor. Now, why do you think it's called or named Valley of the Kings? Now, that was because this is a place where many important people were buried. Along the Valley of the Kings, there were other tombs that were built to house many important pharaohs. Now, Carter found lots of other tombs, but he was certain, he was very, very sure, that there was still one more to find. In November of 1922, Lord Carnarvon was already frustrated. He got crossed. He told Carter, "I have given you lots of money. It's been 8 years. Where is this tomb that you were talking about? Here, this would be the last time I'm gonna give you money. After this, nada. You will be on your own." So Carter got anxious. He's not gonna get any more money after that. So he told man, "Work more. We need to find that tomb. We need to work day and night." No, I was just joking. Or maybe he probably did. So 3 days later, Howard Carter found the steps to Tutankhamun's tomb. Now where did he find them? They were buried under the sand. Carter kept a diary at the time he discovered the tomb. So one of his entries here reads 27th November 1922. Everywhere we found traces of disorder caused by some early intruder, objects overturned, broken fragments lying upon the floor, all added to the confusion. That means the tomb robbers had been in the tomb, but they hadn't taken all the treasures. He said, "As a better light fell upon the objects, we tried to take them in. It was impossible. They were so many." So Tutankhamun was buried with all kinds of riches. Not just the usual way to hide the body, but then he was a king. So in neither of the two chambers could we see any traces of a mummy. So the mystery gradually dawned upon us. We were in the outer portion of the tomb. Behind that closed doorway was a tomb chamber, and Tutankhamun probably lay there. We had found the monarch's burial place intact. Intact means untouched. The tomb robbers had not discovered or disturbed Tutankhamun's mummy. So later, you'll find out why King Tut's mummy was not found by the robbers. So here's another entry from Carter's diary. It reads, "At first, I could see nothing. The hot air escaping from the chamber, causing the candle flame to flicker. But presently, as my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. For a moment, an eternity it must have seemed to the others standing by. I was struck dumb with amazement, and when Lord Carnarvon, unable to stand the suspense any longer, asked anxiously, 'Can you see anything?' It was all I could do to get out the words, 'Yes, wonderful things.'" King Tut's tomb had 4 main rooms: the antechamber, the annex, the burial chamber, and the treasury room. His tomb was extraordinary, as it was only one of 2 pharaoh tombs ever to discover in Egypt that had not been robbed of its treasure. There were more than 5,000 items, and most of them were treasures found in King Tut's tomb. Egyptians buried their pharaohs in elaborate tomb with lots of treasures and other items that pharaohs might need in the afterlife. So there were statues of him and gods, gold jewelries, and of course, King Tut's mummy, chariots that represented grandeur, model boats that was believed as the mode of transportation to the journey to the afterlife. There were also canopic jars that were used as containers for the organs that have been removed from the dead body during the mummification. There were also chairs, not just normal chairs, but golden chairs, and also his throne and paintings. So just now you saw that there were 4 chambers, and only 2 of the 4 chambers were robbed, and the robbers were not able to take everything in those 2 rooms. So here, this is a photo of part of a throne that was found in the tomb, and this is a golden throne. So what does this item tell you about Tutankhamun and his life in ancient Egypt? And this is a statue of god Anubis. He is the god of mummification, god of the afterlife, god of the underworld, and god of tombs. Ancient Egyptians believed that he guided lost souls and the helpless. They also believed that Anubis watched over the dead. Thus, Anubis was the god who watched over the process of mummifying people when they died. And priests often wore the mask of Anubis when they mummify dead bodies or during mummification ceremonies. So this is a pectoral, which is a type of jewelry that was worn on the chest. So if you can notice on top, there's a symbol that looks like an eye. Well, yes, that is the Eye of Horus, also known as the Wadjet. It is an ancient Egyptian symbol of protection, royal power, and good health. Ancient Egyptians believed that this Wadjet will protect the pharaoh in his journey to the afterlife. In ancient Egypt, rich people, instead of using pillow, they use headrest. And this headrest was made from elephant ivory. When in use, the back of the king's or pharaoh's neck would rest on the curved support. The carved figure represents Shu. Shu is a god of the atmosphere, and the two lions on the base represent the eastern and the western horizons. And finally, Howard Carter and his team found the most exciting discovery of all. Of course, it's King Tut's mummy. So the mummified body was placed inside the special coffin called sarcophagus. So if you look at the picture on the right, there's not just one special coffin, but there are 3 sarcophagi, and one is smaller than the other. And King Tut was on the 3rd coffin, the smallest one, covered in his golden death mask. Here's a photo that shows Howard Carter investigating the sarcophagus of King Tutankhamun. This is King Tutankhamun's death mask. It is the mask that was put over him in his sarcophagus, and it is now one of the most famous or most iconic images of ancient Egypt. And it's probably the most famous artifact ever found in Egypt. Howard Carter described it as a beautiful and unique specimen of ancient portraiture. So since King Tutankhamun's body was still intact, or his mummy was still intact, in recent years people have been able to use modern technology to reconstruct his face. So this photo on the right side was what Tutankhamun's face would have looked like when he was still alive.